and welcome back to Random Librarian here on YouTube, and welcome back to what I read in May. So in the month of May I took part in WithCindy's, formerly known as Read with Cindy, which is how she will remain in my heart. I took part in her Asian Readathon and had a lot of fun, and in doing so I made myself read way more than I thought I was going to be able to. So I'm really grateful for that readathon and hoping to do the same next month. I'm filming this on the 31st, so tomorrow, starting tomorrow, for Pride and all of my Pride reads featuring characters and authors who fall under the LGBTQIA+ community. So that's to come. But for right now, we're going to talk about the books I read this month. I'm going to start with the physical books, and these are in no particular order, but we'll go from there. So I have A Burning, and this is a book that I was holding on to for a friend of mine. I think she won it in a giveaway. It is set in India and follows three main characters. So we have Lovely, who's my favorite. The book doesn't open with Lovely's perspective, but I'm telling you about her first because she is my favorite. And Lovely is a Hijra, which is recognized as a third gender in India. And Lovely kind of has this community of other Hijras who she calls her sisters, and they occupy a very niche position in society in that they are both kind of revered and seen as having the power to bless people, so like babies and newlyweds and people at the shrines, and simultaneously shunned. We see Lovely working on the street and trying to get donations from people walking by. So it's a very strange combination of like instincts and reactions to Lovely and her sisters. Lovely is also, however, an aspiring actress, and from the start of the book we see that she is very talented and has something special. So we also follow Jivan, who is a Muslim girl growing up in a lower income bracket, and she has a pretty good paying job. She's trying to help support her parents, and as the book opens, she posts some anti-government things on Facebook, and that turns into her becoming the scapegoat for this awful terrorist attack that just took place on one of the trains near her house. Then we also have PT Sir, who was Jivan's teacher when she was still attending school. She dropped out in order to get the job and support her parents, but he doesn't know that, and he has this weird resentment towards her because he wanted to be her mentor, but she didn't thank him enough. And he uses this case and his connection to Jivan, as flimsy as it is, to get political standing in the opposition power. So it's a very interesting, kind of wide-reaching story that follows these three characters, and it's very shocking. I'm not gonna lie, it was very, very good, but I was also just like blown away. And I don't know much about Indian politics or anything along those lines, but I'm definitely going to be thinking about this for a long time to come. So it's on the shelf right now. I know my mom started it last year but didn't finish it. I don't know how she did that because I finished this in a day. It was propulsive. Just great. Great, and also horrible. Next up, just recently read If I Had Your Face, and this follows again a point of view from four women, I believe, who are living in one apartment building in like a very fashionable part of Seoul. So this is an extremely character-driven plot in the way that there isn't really an overarching plot. It's kind of like a slice of life, but we also do deep dives into each character's history, childhood, hopes and dreams, and it's so good. It's so, I had such a good reading month. Like, oh my gosh, I had some real gems, and this is one of them. So this is a debut novel, and it's stunning, just absolutely incredible. So we follow Curie, who is exceedingly beautiful and has had a lot of cosmetic surgeries to be so. And as a result of her beauty, she works in a room salon, which she acknowledges is sex work, essentially. And in previous room salons, other than the one that she's working in now, it was more explicitly sex work, but because she is in the like top 10%, it is more just like people, predominantly men, come to these room salons in order to be entertained, to speak with and drink with these beautiful women. Heavy stuff. We also have her roommate Miho, who has not had any surgery, is an artist, and was given up by her guardians, who were her aunt and uncle, to a orphanage, and that's also how she knows two of the other characters in this book. And Miho is dating one of the rich heirs to a hotel line, and his mother is very famous, and basically their relationship is kind of seen as a mismatch by most of the people in society. And it's further complicated by the fact that her boyfriend used to date her best friend, who was of his social standing, and said friend committed suicide. So trigger warning for that. We also have Ara, who lives down the hall from them. She is mute and also works as a hairstylist and has an obsession with a member of a K-pop boy band. She grew up being friends with the girls who were part of this orphanage, but she lived with her parents, who work as the kind of groundspeople, chauffeurs, cleaning ladies, chefs for the people who live in the big house, is what they call it. So she's also kind of tangentially connected to that upper echelon of society. We also follow Wona. She lives below our other three main girls, and she is recently married. They're trying for a baby girl. Well, she wants it to be a girl. Her husband just wants them to have a baby. And she is not happy in her marriage and seems to kind of just be going along with it, in large part because of the horrible childhood she had, being raised by her grandmother. So there's a lot of trigger warnings for childhood abuse. For all of these, I really think you should check the story graph for the trigger warnings that people are able to like self-identify and assign to a given book, because there's a lot. And my favorite character actually doesn't have their own point of view, but that is Ada's best friend and roommate, who lived in the orphanage with Miho, and that is Sujin. She wants to be a room salon girl the same way that Kyori is. She is extremely supportive of Ada. She was there when Ada was attacked and became mute, so she wasn't born with that disability, but it developed after an incident that is talked about in this book. But the two of them have been close since like what I would say is like middle school or high school, and they, up through this book and beyond, are just incredibly close and very supportive. Part of the reason why Sujin wants to be a successful room salon girl is because she wants to be able to support Ada. She's the one who got Ada her job. She has all of these kind of behind the scenes support for the different women in this novel, and like some of it is revealed to the other characters, but some of it is never revealed to the characters who benefit from her support in their lives. I just, oh gosh, I love it so much. So their stories really intersect in interesting ways, and it's just very interesting slice of life because we see all of these beauty standards and how they affect different people's lives, but we also see like the society, both how the beauty standards affect society and also how this divide between the haves and the have-nots affects society. And that is especially evident through Miho and her career as an artist, because she goes abroad at one point and she's living in New York, and she has conversations with other Koreans abroad, and within the first couple of minutes they are able to like figure out where she's from and what school she went to, and because it's not the schools that are kind of acceptable, there's one scene where someone just like starts texting on their phone and immediately stops talking to her. So it's just very interesting to see from the point of view of someone who's like, I don't know any like I know high schools in my area, but I'm not going to stop talking to you if you went to public school. Like, we have some very good public schools, and like, it's just very divisive and very different from my own experience. And I don't know if that's true for all of Korea, all of Korean society, but it was just fascinating. So if you like character-driven novels, this is definitely one you should pick up. Also, the blue cover for If I Had Your Face, I don't know if it's the UK edition or like a later publication, because I got this as an advanced reader copy, is stunning as well. So there's really no way to go wrong with getting a copy of If I Had Your Face. I also picked up Haroon and the Sea of Stories. This is something that I had secondhand from a Boston Public Library book sale. So as a result, it has every chapters whoever had the book before me like wrote just little things in pencil, and I think there's like one instance of them highlighting. Yeah, like the first 4 pages they highlighted. So I'm probably just gonna drop this in a little free library instead of giving it away, but this is charming and lovely and a very quick read and very fun. There's just lots of, his imagination is incredible. I've only read one other Salman Rushdie book, and I really think that I need to pick up more of them because they're like irreverent and funny and just kind of out there and wacky and just really fun to read. So this was a blast. I read it in a day and thoroughly enjoyed the experience. Next up, I have Pet, and when I first made my video about what I was going to be reading in May, I didn't realize that Pet fell under this umbrella of Asian authors, and so it was through the Storygraph that I found out that I could count it for this month. So, Akwedeki Emezi is Nigerian and Indian Tamil, and grew up in Nigeria. So their work fit in this month's umbrella, and I have another book that I am going to be reading next month by the same author. Pet follows a trans girl named Jam and her best friend named Redemption as they work to find a monster that is hiding, so like a human monster, who is hiding in their town that thinks that they have eradicated all monsters. In the kind of opening chapters of this, a being that her mother painted comes to life because because Jam accidentally bleeds on it, and that is Pet. So Pet is a hunter. Pet is able to tell that there is a monster in their town and needs help actually finding out who the monster is and being able to prove that. So this deals with some very, very heavy things, including the abuse of a child. So it's definitely got some heavier themes, but it's written so beautifully, and I absolutely loved every moment of this book. So Jam is sometimes able to speak and sometimes needs to use sign language, and both that need and her transness is handled with such a kind of casual acceptance and support that it really just touched my heart. So her best friend and her family and his family all learn sign language so that they can communicate with her. There's a few references to Jam's transition and the support that she received during it, but it's not a coming out story. It's a story about the things that children can see and the things that children are able to present that maybe adults don't want to face. So the adults in this story are adamant that monsters aren't around anymore. No one would hurt children. And as a result, they don't notice when a monster is in their midst. And it falls to Jam, Redemption, and Pet to say, this isn't something we can get rid of once. It's something that we need to constantly be on the look for in order to protect those among us who need protection. On the back it says, forgetting is how the monsters come back. Oh God. Basically, I want to read everything Amezi has ever published. They are just masterful in their command of language. I also read Tokyo Ever After, and I have a full review on this one if you want to hear all of my thoughts. Essentially, I think it is the perfect summer read. That's it, basically. For me, it really reminded me of What a Girl Wants and The Princess Diaries. They also, some of the promo for it has been likening it to Crazy Rich Asians. It's just a very fun book, and it follows Izumi, who is a Japanese-American teenager growing up in California when she and her friend discover that her father, who's been absent for her whole life, is actually the Crown Prince of Japan. And so we get to follow her going to Japan, connecting with her roots, learning about the culture and learning to speak Japanese, meeting all of her extended family, having a bit of a romance. It is so fun, and it will make you laugh and smile, and of course there are also moments that will make you kind of cringe because there are mistakes that are made, but it's all like just in good fun, essentially. And I hope that this gets a movie or a TV show or a series. Just give me more, please. So, good job, Amiko Jean. Next up, we have this chunk of a book, which is Jade City. So this is first book in, I believe it's going to be a trilogy. The first and the second books are out already. The third book is coming out very soon. And this is extremely unique in the way that magic is used and is capable of being used. So it's a jade-based magic system, and the people of the island of Kekan are able to handle jade and are able to use it to do these like extreme transformations almost. Like they can become stronger, they can jump higher, they can just do incredible feats with jade. And it's also part of a hierarchical system of gang warfare, essentially, because the two warring families, well, they start off kind of, they don't like each other, but they start off, then they go to war. So the two clans are the ones who wear the jade, and they're called Green Bones. And if you kill someone in a fight as part of this war, you are entitled to their jade. So you can like rip it out of their body, take it off of them, and wear it, and increase your own strength as a result. Then we have foreigners and anyone who's not from this island who has no sense of how to handle it, no training in handling it, no resistance to the power of jade. So if people not from this island who aren't taking a special drug to help them equip themselves with jade try and handle it, they tend to go insane and die of what is called the itches. There's a lot in here that is just shocking and traumatizing for the characters involved. And there's also a lot that's really good about it. I think it does suffer a little bit from info dump just because it is such a unique system, and like the world is very complex. So I had times when I was just kind of zoning out and not really engaged in what was happening. But I am still really interested to see where the series goes. So I have the second book on hold in audiobook form so I can make it go fast. And I'll see what happens. But it's really, yeah, it's really, really good. It just has weird timing, I would say. It's also very long. It's like exactly 500 pages, and it's a 500-page book that reads like a 500-page book, if that makes sense. But a good 500-page book. But you don't forget that it's 500 pages. I still really liked it. It just wasn't my favorite of the month. This is the first book that I read for this month, and that is Shatter Me by Tahara Mephi. And this book has so much hype that I really wish that I liked it more. Yeah. I think if I had read it when I was a teenager, I would have definitely liked it. It's really written for a YA audience, but it also, in my mind, is kind of derivative of other books in the same genre. So when I was reading it, the scenes that were being created weren't unique in my head. Instead, I was getting flashes from, you know, how I pictured the world looked in The Hunger Games or the film of Divergent, or for some reason the TV show version of Nikita, where they have like an underground fighting school, assassin school, whatever it is. I would see glimpses from other media instead of having the book give me something unique to it. It's also got two boys who are just immediately very obsessed with and in love with our main character, who has been in isolation for like years. So I think she should just, someone should give her therapy, and maybe she shouldn't be involved in a love triangle. Both boys are able to touch her, which no one else is able to do. It's like post-apocalyptic stuff going on, and I want to know what's going on, because you get no explanation in this book at all. So again, I have the second book on hold from my library, but I'm just not that interested, sadly. So this was the one book that I read this month that I was just like, meh. I can see why people love it, but it wasn't for me. Next up, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So this is another short, quick read that is just stellar. It will stay with you forever. So we have 4 different stories of people who want to travel through time for different reasons. And there was really only one that didn't make me cry, but in a great way. It's very hopeful despite the heavy topics that it handles. And it's whimsical and just stunning. Again, it's gonna stick with me for a very long time, so I'm really glad I read this. Apparently, there is a second volume or other stories, so I'm gonna be looking into that and seeing what I can find and then reading it, because this was delightful. I also read The Popular, which has been on my radar for a while. I saw people reacting to book 3 in real time on Twitter, and they were absolutely destroyed. So I figured, why not have me do that too? I only have book 1 and 2 so far because they're in paperback, and book 3 is not yet out in paperback. So yeah, I'm also probably going to take a little bit of a break before I pick up book 2 because we are in the middle of a war at the end of this book, and some very severe atrocities have happened on both sides. Like, very seriously, this is like an on both sides situation. Like, no one in this book is a good person. So yeah, it gets very dark. And this book itself is kind of built like a trilogy. So we follow Rin as she studies and tries to get into Synagard, which is a military academy, as a way of pulling herself out of being a war orphan who's very much not treated well by her adoptive family. Then we have Rin at Synagard and her not fitting in because she is a war orphan and she's surrounded mostly by people who are the children of like the high society, high class warlords in this position. And then book 3, or part 3, we are actually in the war. And for most of part 1 and part 2, Rin thinks she's normal. And then in the middle of her studies, she discovers that she has this ability, that she can tap into something greater than herself. And the way that the magic works in this book is so interesting. I definitely recommend it, but again, check the trigger warnings because, wow. I mean, it's war, and oof, the worst of humanity, basically. It's based on a real war, but I don't think that they had any fire shamans in that war. Or if they did, I would love to learn more about it. Then I just finished The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo, and I absolutely loved this book. It is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, but it's from Jordan Baker's perspective, and in this book, Jordan Baker is, let's see, here's the list that it says in here. Queer, Asian, adopted, and treated as an exotic attraction by her peers, while the most important doors remain closed to her. So Jordan is kind of in this strange position of being an Asian adoptee in the South, and she becomes the de facto heir of this rich Southern family. So she is in this predominantly white, predominantly wealthy environment her whole life, after having been adopted or rescued or stolen from her family when her new family was on a missionary trip. So that on its own, very, very fascinating. Then we have magic. So we have Gatsby, who has sold his soul, so demons and hell exist. We have people of different magical, mystical abilities. Jordan herself has paper magic, which is something that isn't explored too much, and I've seen complaints about that. But I think it's actually handled very well because her paper magic is something that she would have learned if she had been allowed to stay with her blood family, with the people that gave birth to her. So her having any kind of grasp on this magic that no one in the United States knows how to do, I think is representative of that. And what we do see of it is very interesting. And then we see at the end her going off to kind of learn more about it. And I'm just really excited for her, but also kind of heartbroken for her because part of the reason that she's leaving is racism rearing its ugly head in America. It has all of the like fun jazz age kind of glitz and glamour that you would expect, but made like 10 times better because from Jordan's perspective, who just loves pretty people essentially, she wants to make out with girls. She wants to make out with boys. She falls in love with girls. She falls in love with boys, men, women, everyone. And we get to see these kind of fantastic magical clubs that she goes to that Niveau has really just like created from her imagination, and they're stunning. This is what I'm sending off to a friend of mine on Instagram because I feel like she would also really love it. So I'm very excited for that. This next one is actually a book that I was not able to continue because it got very heavy very quickly, and someone on Instagram told me like, it gets worse. And that is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. And this was under the horror category on the Storygraph, and I fully agree. This book put my heart into tatters within 56 pages. So within those 56 pages, our main character is abused physically, emotionally, verbally, and sexually by an adult in her life. So I can't handle that. It's very explicit, and the abuse has been internalized in such a heartbreaking way that I just have to put it aside. I don't know if I'm ever going to pick this back up again, and it's not because it's badly written or that it doesn't have something to say. It's because it just really got to me. Warning. So I also started a couple of books that I haven't finished, and that includes Legend by Marie Lu. And this is something that I've wanted to read for a while, but for some reason it's just not gripping me just yet. So I'm interested in continuing, but it might be an after June kind of read for me. So it's kind of off to a slow start, which seems weird because like we have someone breaking into a hospital and we have someone dying under mysterious circumstances. And we have a kind of post-apocalyptic vibe, but the pacing feels slow to me, if that makes any kind of sense. I also have Salt Houses, and this is the only book on my shelves by a Palestinian author, and that takes place in Palestine. This is a family saga, and I'm only like a chapter and a half in. The chapters are very long though. It's not my preference. So this is definitely something that I think I'm going to have to be in the right mood for. It's kind of definitely slower paced because it is slice of life, but in a different way than If I Had Your Faces, because this involves war and strife and also happy things like marriage and love, all that good stuff. And I originally was going to read this for a book club, so I'm kind of bummed that I didn't. I moved before that book club was meeting, so I'm kind of bummed at myself that I didn't read it from before that and have people I could talk about it with. But what can you do? Then I am currently reading The Bone Shard Daughter, which is stunning. We have multi-narratives, it is fantasy, and I am so intrigued to see where this is going. This is one that I'm starting in May, but will continue through June because we have a women-loving women relationship in this, and one of said women was just kidnapped. So yeah, I'm very hooked by this one. And then I also have Little Fires Everywhere, which I might try to just read today to get one more book under my belt for books read in May, because it's short and I know that it's very grippy, based both by the fact that it has the Hulu series and Reese's Book Club, and I think it's a thriller and people seem to just like rip through it. So who knows? Then I also have all of the books that I read through Libby and Hoopla. So I started with Mooncakes, which was just so fun. It is the story of a disabled witch. She has limited or no hearing. She wears hearing aids. And her non-binary werewolf partner and the big bad that they have to fight using magic. I don't know what else you could want from that. There's also ghosts and like family who come from beyond the pale. Is that the correct term? I listened to When Breath Becomes Air, which is just, oh, so good, but like so painful because I feel like I got to know the author, Paul, through this book, but it's published after his death. And I just was blown away by this. And a friend of mine had been telling me to read this for a really long time, so I'm very glad that I finally did. And I think you should too. It's so good. Then I read They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, which is a graphic novel representation of his childhood, having been sent to and lived in multiple Japanese internment camps for years. And that was after 1942, President Roosevelt said that every person of Japanese descent needed to be put in these centers. And they were considered enemies at home. Like even if they had lived in the United States their entire lives, they were thought to have loyalty to Japan, who we were at war with. And just seeing this through George Takei's like child eyes and hearing about how he fought against racism throughout his career and kind of fought to present an Asian man who was able to go beyond the stars and into outer space in Star Trek. It was just incredible. It broke my heart, it made me cry, and it's really hopeful. So definitely hugely recommended. I was on a bit of a memoir kick, so I also read I Was Their American Dream, which is by Malaka Gharib. Her father is from Egypt and her mother is from the Philippines. This book kind of works through how she feels more Filipino growing up because they lived with the Filipino side of her family, and it also follows her trips to Egypt growing up and her father's new family, and also how she feels, as the title suggests, like her parents' American dream. This was a very quick read. The art style is very unique and I really liked it. Yeah. I love a good graphic memoir also. Continuing the memoir kick that I was on, I read Dear Girls by Ali Wong. And this is a series of letters to her daughters. I think this book suffered a little bit from not having like a set what it would be, because it could just be letters to my daughters. It could just be a stand-up kind of set, the way that she does stand-up and that have been filmed for Netflix. It could just be a memoir, but instead it tries to be all three, and it felt a little disjointed as a result. It has great stories in it, it has great advice in it, it has very funny moments in it, but they didn't kind of come together cohesively for me. I then listened to The Silvered Serpents by Roshani Chokshi, which is the second book after The Gilded Wolves. This I liked better than The Gilded Wolves, and I don't know why I didn't love The Gilded Wolves, because we have this diverse cast of characters, we have this unique magic system, like different affinities, and we have this found family that protects each other. And we end on a cliffhanger in this one, so I'm kind of annoyed that I have to wait to find out like what happens. But we have a lot more strife in this book as well. The stakes are higher. So I think that's probably why I liked it better. Then I read In Real Life, which is just a quick graphic novel about a girl who plays this online game as part of a guild. She becomes friends with a boy who's living around the world from her, who is in a difficult situation, and she tries to help them survive their job essentially because they're being very poorly treated. It's a very quick read, so if that like one line sounds interesting to you, just give it a go. Then I read Stargazing by Jen Wang, which is based on her own childhood surgery and follows Moon, who is new in this neighborhood. She becomes friends with a girl named Christine, and Moon sees what she thinks are like beings from the stars, and they have a really lovely friendship and are very sweet. But there's also jealousy back and forth, and then it becomes evident when Moon starts, she has like mood swings but also passes out. Becomes evident that the reason that she's seeing these beings and the reason that some of her emotions are out of whack is because she actually has a tumor in her brain. Just wow. So I love Jen Wang's work just in general. They also worked on The Prince and the Dressmaker and have a very just readable style and storytelling, so I definitely recommend checking them out. Then I read the volume 1 of Monstrous, which I had started a while ago but somehow never finished, and not sure I will continue because it is dark. Good, but dark. So we have humans, and then we have witches, which I think are attached to the humans. Then we have different levels of like gods, and then the demigods, who are the Arcanics, and the witches blame the Arcanics for everything, but also use their body parts and their blood in order to do magic. And it's a lot and more political than I was expecting, but interesting. I then picked up The Shadow Hero by Jean Luen Yang and Sunny Liu, and this is a reimagining of an earlier comic, because there's this comic that an artist wanted to create in 1944, and they wanted their character to be like the first Asian American superhero. And the people who were paying him to do the comic were like, you can't do that. So in the comic, we never see the superhero's face. And they include a bit at the end of the book of the history of this comic and the thoughts behind it and the theories that people have, and it was really interesting. And so this is like the reimagined story for it, and it involves a turtle spirit that came with our main character's dad to the New World and gave him a promise, and that promise like depending on what promise you exact from these different spirits, because there are many of them, you can change the world. So the father asked to never drink again, and he didn't. And then a different character asks to always emerge victorious from a fight. And our main character asks to never be shot. So it's very interesting to see how it works. There are other superheroes involved in the story as well, and it's really touching. I liked it a lot. It was very fun to read, and I loved the idea of bringing the Asian American superhero that wasn't to the forefront and like explicitly giving him that background. Just very, very good. And then the last graphic novel that I read was American Born Chinese. And I think this was kind of on me because I went into it expecting it to be a memoir, but it is very much not. Instead, it follows 3 different storylines that come together in this very smart way. And it was just really interesting. Again, I'm not entirely sure what I think of it just yet. and I kind of want to have a conversation with people. Right now I'm just like reading different reviews that other people have left, people who loved it, people who have hated it. And yeah, I mean, it was three very, very different stories that come together in a way that makes sense. And you definitely have to suspend your disbelief for this one, but wow, very good. I think. So, that's everything that I read in May. And like I said, I might try to squeeze in another one today since it is the last day of May, but I might just edit this video instead and have it posted tomorrow. And I really enjoyed doing a kind of readathon like this and giving myself a little bit more structure when I'm reading, since I am very much a mood reader. I tend not to do that, but I stuck to the pile that I had, like the physical pile, and prioritized books that I already own. I'm probably gonna give these away either on TikTok or Instagram, maybe on here. I don't know how that really works though, because I don't think I can DM somebody and ask for their address. But anyways, if you're interested in these books, you can maybe win them on either of those, and you can find links to my Instagram and TikTok down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, wow, I mean, gold star for you. If you want to leave, I'm looking at the Poppy War, so like an orange heart down below, I will be sure to give you some extreme love. In any case, I will see you guys very soon.